So Putin's had a rough day. I mean, I think that's a very fair way of putting this. He lost 1/3 of his strategic bomber fleet in one day. Like, Ukraine just pulled off something massive. Wow. Okay, so let's look at this. Here are some images of the smoke at the airfields where the planes were hit. You can see this. This was the drones image. As the drones, their AI. They're trying to figure out what they're going to hit based on AI, right? So it's something more than, like, there are operators involved, but there's more than operators, and those AI drones were trained on museum pieces of these type of planes. It's really amazing what they've been able to do here. And so you can see there's just a line of these planes that have been hit. So you can see it for yourself. The Ukraine's SBU claims that today's special operation, which was called Spiderweb, struck 34% of Russia's strategic cruise missile carriers at key air bases. The estimated value of the damaged aviation assets is $7 billion billion with a B. That's just amazing that this has happened like it has. Okay, here's Ukraine's trump card, the Trojan horse attack drones that essentially destroyed most of the Russian strategic bomber fleet were AI controlled to precisely strike the vulnerable locations of each target aircraft. So whether they're damaged or destroyed, they probably have more damage if they're not destroyed than otherwise, because they weren't just trying to hit something or somebody trying to control like a video game. It was more than that. And then Zelenskyy said the SBU Operation Spiderweb to destroy the Russian strategic bomber fleet achieved an absolutely brilliant result and will go down in the history books. I think that's fair. I think the nature of warfare has irreparably changed as of today. So, okay. Now, Russian media was claiming that the owners of the warehouse in one of the locations have been detained and allegedly, okay, so those people are already gone, and they actually rounded up the next door neighbors and were, detaining them as if that was going to do anything. MASH reports the site is now empty and security forces have tested for explosive traces there. Okay. Now, were they or weren't they? Was the U.S. informed of this ahead of time? I reported two things, and now I'm updating. According to Axios, the U.S. was notified ahead of time. According to CBS contradicted that and said no, they were not. And then Axios actually retracted their statement. Donald Trump has not yet, at this point where I'm recording, posted or tweeted out anything. We've heard nothing from the Americans at this point in the day. Okay, so now before I go on to the next thing, let me show you this. This is Zelenskyy giving his evening speech, and what he has to say is really pretty amazing. He'll give you all the background in about 3 minutes. Let's listen to this.
I wish you health, fellow Ukrainians. Just now I received a report from head of the Security Service of Ukraine, Vasyl Malyuk. A brilliant operation was carried out. It took place on enemy territory and was aimed exclusively at military targets specifically. The equipment used in strikes against Ukraine was our target. Russia suffered truly significant losses, entirely justified and deserved. I thank the Security Service, General Malyuk personally, as well as everyone who was involved in the operation. The preparation took over a year and a half. Planning, organization, every detail was perfectly executed. I can say with certainty that this is an absolutely unique operation. What's most interesting, and this can now be stated publicly, is that the office of our operation on Russian territory was located directly next to the FSB headquarters in one of their regions. In total, 117 drones were used in the operation, with a corresponding number of drone operators involved. 34% of the strategic cruise missile carriers stationed at the air bases were hit. Our personnel operated across multiple Russian regions in 3 different time zones. And the people who assisted us were withdrawn from Russian territory before the operation, and they are now safe. It is genuinely satisfying when something I authorized a year and 6 months ago comes to fruition and deprives the Russians of over 40 units of strategic aviation. We will continue this work. Even before this operation was carried out, we had intelligence indicating that Russia was preparing another massive strike. And it is very important for all our people not to ignore the air raid alerts. Last night, there were nearly 500 Russian drones, attack drones. Each week, they have been increasing the number of units used per strike. Now they have also prepared caliber missile launches from the naval classes. We know exactly who we are dealing with, and we will defend ourselves by all means available to us, to Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. Not for a single second did we want this war. We offered the Russians a ceasefire. Since March 11th, the United States' proposal for a full and unconditional ceasefire has been on the table. It was the Russians who chose to continue this war, even under conditions where the entire world is calling for an end to the killing. And pressure is truly needed. Pressure on Russia that should bring it back to reality. Pressure through sanctions, pressure from our forces, pressure through diplomacy. All of it must work together.
So that's what Zelenskyy had to say. There's a lot here that I want to cover and I want to go back to. So he said some really interesting things. It's entirely deserved. It's justified. He said that the preparation was going on for a year and a half. He also talked about how the office was right next to the FSB, which he's saying that for a reason. He's telling them we can do this. We can do this now, and we can do it again. 117 drones in the operation, and they pulled all their guys out before the operation went down. Again, there was a truck driver that drove the truck not knowing what was in that, and then the Russians killed the guy because they thought he was somehow involved, and they didn't even give him a hearing or whatever. He didn't know what was going on. So it took a lot of work. It was a unique operation. Warfare has changed irreparably, I think, after this. Now, meanwhile, the Russians sent 500 drones, attack drones, last night alone, right? And they keep ramping it up, and they had multiple bombers on the launch pad, or not on the launch pad, on the runways, ready to go. They were starting to load things up, and so this was a great time for them to have struck. Will the Russians respond? Of course they will. It's going to be a pretty bad strike when they do hit, but Ukraine just wiped out a third of strategic bombs, and that's not nothing. Okay, let's go on and look at this. Now, that was during the day, all that I talked about. This is what's happening right now. Ukraine is carrying out massive attacks again now that it's night. Attacks reported across the country, including Moscow and Kursk. Here's explosions reported in both Rostov and Kursk. Here's more from Kursk at the moment. Here is, and I'll give you the play-by-play tomorrow of what actually happened. The Ryazan region is also under Ukrainian drone attack at this moment in lots of areas. Russia's air defense is operating. 8 explosions are recorded in Lipsig region. Meanwhile, locals in Voronezh region are also reporting Ukrainian drone activity. Ukrainian UAVs are now active in Boris-Glebsk, which hosts Boris-Glebsk Air Base, a home of Russian fighter jets. So maybe we'll see some more aviation that's being attacked. According to the Russian channels, Ukrainian naval drones have also been spotted in the Black Sea, headed for occupied Crimea. So, there's a lot going on even right now. And again, I'll give you updates about that in the morning. While I'm at it, if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. I do these updates every day. If you don't like hearing about what's going on in Ukraine, you can always unsubscribe later. Okay. Now, meanwhile, I talked about the trains today in a different video about the two train bridges that were had broken down or blown up or whatever it was, and we're not sure exactly what it was. Well, the Russians decided to finish off the collapsed bridge in the Bryansk region for some reason. Here's the before and here's the after video of that. Yeah, and so that's, I guess it's easier to rebuild or something afterwards. I don't know. But there were 3 attacks, or I can't even say attacks because I don't know if it was just incompetence and corruption or an attack or what, but there were 3 of these incidents today. Okay. Now, going back to the last and final big story, we continue to propose a full and unconditional ceasefire along with rational and dignified steps that could lead to lasting and reliable peace. The Ukrainian proposal we presented to the Russians is logical and realistic. Okay, that's Zelenskyy. Now, what are the parts of this? Well, Ukraine's conditions for Istanbul peace talks, as revealed by Reuters, are, and the Ukrainians made theirs public. The Russians still have not, and they said they're not going to. 30-day full ceasefire, all-for-all prisoner swap, Zelenskyy-Putin meeting, no restrictions on Ukrainian forces, no recognition of Russian territorial gains, Russian reparations, and talks to start from current front line. Okay, the Ukrainians are asking for everything, the Russians are asking for everything, and I don't know that anything's going to come of it. A little bit more about this. Here is Anton Gerashenko pointing out, directly from what Reuters had put out here. Here's prerequisites for negotiations are confidence-building measures addressing all humanitarian issues, unconditionally return all deported and illegally displaced Ukrainian children. That should be starting point number 1. Unless you do that, what else are we even talking about here? Exchange of all prisoners, released by Russia of all civilian hostages. Non-repetition of aggression. The aim of the negotiations is to restore a permanent basis for lasting peace and security and to ensure that aggression does not occur again. Security guarantees and engagement of the international community. Ukraine must receive robust security guarantees. Sovereignty. Ukraine is not forced to be neutral. It can choose to be part of the Euro-Atlantic community and move toward EU membership. Ukraine's membership in NATO depends on consensus within the alliance. No restrictions may be imposed on the number, deployment, or other parameters of the armed forces of Ukraine. Territorial issues, territorial gains made by Russia since February 2014 are not recognized by the international community. The contact line is a starting point for negotiations. And then they go on and on. So, yeah, they're asking for all these things that they properly and should be, including reparations. Russia, you started this. You need to pay for this. Otherwise, it'll be paid for. The rebuilding will be paid for by the Europeans. And that's just utterly absurd. Okay, Reagan Caucus posted this. I thought this was good. When the war is done, both the Pentagon and American weapons manufacturers ought to recruit a ton of Ukrainians. They've got a lot to teach us. That's right. They do. And American military planners, you had better be watching what's going on in Ukraine. I'll leave you with this. David Frum, he said, we've reached a point where Ukraine needs to consider very hard whether it is willing to extend a Ukrainian security guarantee to NATO. All right, my friends, that's all that I have. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. Tell me what you thought about what you saw here today. Put that in the comments below, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.